about the concept of link rot and content drift. Can you please explain about them?
Sure. So the internet's made up of hyperlinks. So there are different pages that are linked together with hyperlinks. And those links are what allow you to navigate the internet, find your way around, bookmark pages, and so on. So when those links break, the internet breaks. And that can happen for various reasons. If pages are deleted, if they're moved, if they're renamed even. And when those links break, that's called link rot. Content drift is a related issue, and it's what happens when the content of a web page changes over time. That sometimes happens if somebody new takes over a web page. So, for example, if a new government comes to power, government ministries and agencies might have their web pages change dramatically. But it can also just happen in the course of day-to-day updates that happen to a website. So say your local public library could have information on it about a knitting program that you linked to that then is later taken down because the program no longer exists or it's been moved to a different part of the website. So the link remains the same, the link is still functional, but the information that was linked to is no longer there. So while the link works, it's kind of meaningless and you're losing the contextual information that makes that link make sense.
Well, indeed, but how are these related to me?
So on an individual level, it can definitely be inconvenient or frustrating to not be able to either find the information you want or to follow the link that you're used to following. But it's a much bigger systemic issue when it comes to fields that need big, stable bodies of knowledge and that rely on functioning links to continue to exist. So increasingly, links are used in the references of a variety of different kinds of articles. So it can be any kind of academic journal, could be medical studies, could be legal decisions, could be journal articles or newspaper articles. And when those links stop working or when the content that's linked to goes away, it undermines the credibility of the article and takes away a huge chunk of information from the scholarly conversation happening in that field.
Interesting, I never thought about this. So what should we do to save the content?
So web archiving is one response to these issues. The Internet Archive was one of the earliest web archives, and it started archiving web pages in about 2005. And usually the way that web archiving works is that there's a computer program that either navigates the internet automatically, taking snapshots of the pages it encounters, or a similar program that will record the clicks of a user and then record snapshots of the pages that the user visits. And that way, what happens is it builds up snapshots of the pages and then also the links between those pages to preserve the relationships and allow you to kind of navigate the pages as if they were still live, even if the pages disappear. There are some problems with that because some media like videos or content posted to social media sites are a little bit more difficult to capture. So it's not perfect, but it definitely can record the majority of the information that's there. Archivists and historians argue that it's really important to do this work because it allows us to capture and record the art, culture, and knowledge of our time that is otherwise at risk of disappearing as links break and as content is changed.
Sounds like the right thing to do, but should we preserve everything on the internet regardless of the content?
So while there's definitely a lot of really good reasons to do web archiving, there is some pushback. Some people are concerned that private information, especially information that's either embarrassing or maybe incriminating, that information persisting on the internet in internet archives, either formal internet archives or in the archives of newspapers, that could have really serious repercussions on their lives, in their relationships, in their jobs, and that they should have a right to have that information removed. So in 2014, the European Supreme Court ruled that individuals do have the right to request that inaccurate or outdated information be removed from search engines like Google, but there's not a lot of legislation in other parts of the world. Another example is there was a blog post posted around the time of the 2016 Rio Olympics that outed a number of queer athletes, and there was a lot of concern then because some of those athletes lived in countries where homosexuality is really stigmatized or criminalized, and so both the blog post and the snapshot in the Internet Archive were taken down out of concern for the safety of the athletes. And I believe that's the only instance in which the Internet Archive has actually removed content for right to be forgotten reasons. There isn't any right to be forgotten legislation in Canada so far.
It seems contradictory to the web archiving, isn't it? Is there a middle ground?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's a question of balancing the rights of individuals who have privacy concerns with the need to have a public record. So experts are concerned that if too much is done in the area of the right to be forgotten, that could represent a kind of selective editing of history. And especially when it comes to governments, big institutions, public figures, elected officials, we want to be able to have a record of the things that people have said and what those institutions have done. Not having access to that information later could have really, really bad ramifications. And in some cases, web archives have actually been used in legal cases to make real legal decisions. So, as I said before, it is a balance. We want to make sure that people feel protected, but it is really, really important to have that public record and to have internet history being recorded for posterity, for legal decisions, for people's personal reference, and to make sure that everybody's held accountable for their actions.